His ex-wife didn't do anything for him anymore at all. Of course, her personality had soured that, but he didn't have time to go thinking about Arizona right now. He had to deal with Daniel. He rounded on the kid, and as soon as they were in the cabin, "What the hell were you thinking?" "I was thinking I'm going to prove to you that I'm a man," he said. "I didn't do anything to you, kid. Where's this coming from? You didn't do anything to me, maybe, but you left me to rot out there in the city with Mom. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of her, all of her boyfriends. I don't leave you to rot, you little asshole. It's called a custody agreement. It's not my fault that the judge gave most of the time to your mom." "Well, how the hell did you make it so that she's going to let you stay out here for 30 days with me? I told her flat out if I was going after you, what happened when I found you was up to me. Given she's liable to get charged with neglect for how she handled it, she was agreeable. How did you sneak up on me this morning anyway?" "I flew and I had a car drop me off at the edge of the driveway. Apparently they even have ride-share services out here. But anyway, she agreed to let me deal with you as I saw fit if I came out here. I'll let her know that we are staying for a month." "She doesn't care about me," Daniel said. "Not at all. She just likes to use me to hurt you." Micah stopped, his heart and the freezing in his chest. "I don't think that's true," he said. "Your mother might be a difficult woman and she might show love in some different ways, but I do believe that she does love you. I do. I don't think that she doesn't know what love is. That's why she keeps hooking up with all these idiots all the time. She doesn't know that when what she had was you with you was good." Micah appreciated his kid being on his team, but the fact of the matter was Daniel couldn't possibly remember how he and Lacey had been together. "I thought you wanted to start a new life away from me, too," he said. "No, just away from, it isn't you, Dad, it's Texas. It's anywhere near Mom." "I'm sorry," Micah said. "Of all the things I'm sorry about, that we couldn't give you a home with the two of us is the biggest one." "Do you know that woman?" Daniel asked, changing the subject, because they both tended to be allergic to sincerity. "Why?" "I don't know. Just wondering if she was here when you were here." "Yeah, I know her. Man, she's hot. She's got huge—" "I will kick your ass," Micah said. "You don't talk about women like that." "I'm not being rude about it," he muttered, "or saying anything that wasn't true. We don't talk about women's big—" "Well, you just don't. Trust that every man in the vicinity isn't a blood relation. Notice that without needing it pointed out, and just leave it at that." "Oh," he said, and he seemed to be processing the fact that based on what Micah had just said, Micah had noticed. Of course he had. He'd been inappropriately noticing Arizona King's rack for way longer than he should been. And he noticed it today in the company of his son, who was being a horny little asshole. "I actually think maybe your life in Texas isn't as bad as you think it is. And you're about to find all that out working your knuckles to the bone on this ranch. You might be begging to go back to the city life." "I'm never going to be begging to go back to playing new Uncle Roulette, where the question of the day is, which dude with a hairy back is going to be standing in the kitchen looking for a beer at 9 a.m. Micah winced. "All right. Look, kid," he said, "we're going to work all this out, I swear. We're going to figure out how to come to terms with all of this, how to make a better life. We got 30 days to build it, and I think we're going to be able to. Maybe we get it back. This place is pretty cool," he said, interrupting Micah. Yeah, he was looking around. "It's not bad. Rustic and barely more than 4 walls with a toilet, but it wasn't anything he hadn't lived in before. The thing was, he thought that he'd gotten away from this, and here he was, back in the middle of a complicated time in his life, and he thought he'd never have to revisit. He made a successful life for himself, and a personal life had dissolved. Maybe getting back to this place wasn't the worst thing. It was the truth. He'd always said it. It was the most beautiful place on earth. He always said it was one of the best times of his life, but he never intended to revisit it, because he'd learned, if he'd learned anything, it was that you could never go home again. You just had to move forward. And judging by the look on Arizona's face when she'd seen him today, he was right about that. Anyway, he had no idea what years had done to Arizona King. He just knew that they'd done a hell of a number on him. He missed her all of these years. He wondered what might have been, and even if Even as he did, he tried to tell himself that there was pie in the sky stuff, that men loved a what if, a romance that never really happened, a big fish story. She was just the one that got away. But now suddenly he wondered if she was more, if it was fate. No. He was 29. He was not 29 anymore. He didn't have that kind of faith left in him. So this is a bunkhouse, he said, gesturing grandly around the space as a plan began to form. Work days start early on a ranch, buddy. So if you expect to make it 30 days, it's time to get tough. Chapter 6. When Arizona woke up the next morning, his name was the first word that popped out into her mind. He was here. He was back. Micah Stone. The thought made her chest constrict, made her heart thunder yet even more rapidly. She felt silly. She felt 18, and she hated to think that the girl that she'd been at 18, all smooth, soft skin and brilliant dreams, she didn't have any of that anymore. She scrubbed an arm over her face and continued to lie there, but it was nearly sunrise. She didn't have time for that nonsense. She got up. Her brothers were already in the kitchen, standing around over their coffee pots. They had more than one coffee maker. There was too many people in the house for them to mess around with making not quite enough coffee every day. Penny was there too. Penelope, their honorary sister who'd come to live with them back when she was in high school after she lost her dad. As if the King family was soft, gentler kind of people to be caring to be somebody who had been through difficult times. They weren't. But they had done their best. And if something to do with what her dad had felt, he owed Penny's dad. Arizona had never been exactly clear on it, but their dad had never made it his business to be clear. He was not that sort of man. The sort of man who prized the affection of children. He wanted their fear and their respect. He didn't necessarily wish to be known by them. Denver, Laundry, Daughtry, and Justice were seated around the table. Penny was tucked into the back corner, her blonde hair tied up in a bun, wisp of pale white falling into her face. And when Arizona walked in, they all looked up and stared at her. "What?" she asked. "We have a new ranch hand." The question came from Denver. "So what's noticeable about that?" Arizona asked. She wasn't friendly. She knew that. She had a reputation for it. In fact, it was just that no one really knew or understood why. Sometimes she didn't really know or understand why. Was it all a defense mechanism because of her scars? Outside of the family, people didn't realize that she had them, or at least they didn't know the extent of them. Yeah, they might vaguely remember the car accident that she'd been in all those years ago. There was any number of accidents and dramatic happenings that occurred to the people at the ranch, but that was the thing. Ranching was tough work, and they tended to work hard and play harder. Over the years, a lot of things happened. Hell, Gus McLeod had been set on fire. His scars were on his face, and people couldn't help but be conscious of them. But people really didn't think too much about what had happened to her. It'd been years ago, for anyone knew. She wasn't permanently injured. That she never wore shorts, no matter how hot it was, never showed her arms, never swam in the lake. Well, people wrote it off as being part of her prickly weirdness. But she knew that she was scarred. She knew that there was damage and that would never heal from. Yeah, but it's just weird, right? He's Micah Stone's son. That guy worked here years ago, and if I'm not mistaken, she narrowed her eyes and looked at her brother, Denver. I would be very careful about finishing that sentence, Denver, because I'll have you know that nothing ever happened between me and Micah Stone, and nothing ever will. I'm not that kind of idiot. I don't fuck around with ranch hands then, and I don't do it now. You don't fuck around with anything, said Daughtry, much less human emotion and basic decency. Your opinion is noted, you marshmallow, she said. Would you like some coffee? Penny asked, her voice soft and feathery, and Arizona felt ridiculously irritated by it. Put some metal in your voice, Penny, she said. I know you're not still scared of me. Nobody wants their head bitten off by you, said Daughtry. Maybe take it back a peg or two, all right? I don't have to take it back any peg, said Arizona. I don't owe you anything, least of all a smile. You're like a damn badger, Justice said, except badgers might be safer to cuddle. Fuck off, she said, pouring her own cup of coffee into the travel mug and stomping from the kitchen. Immediately after she did that, she felt regret. She did that, let her mouth run off with her, and then felt gross right after. She didn't have conversations about herself. She didn't like to get caught up in discussions about the past. She'd woken up thinking about things she didn't like. She didn't know why she was so awful sometimes. She stomped out into the blue pre-dawn air and got into her trucks. Then she started the engine and sat for a minute, her hands wrapped around the coffee mug. She set the liquid warmth through her. She didn't know why it was so hard. She just didn't know. And she was jittery because she was going to see Micah. No, she was not going to see Micah. She was going to let the foreman handle it, meaning laundry. She was going to leave and leave it alone. So she decided to busy herself in the back pasture where she knew no one else would be but where there were holes to fix in the fence. It was a perfect place for the quiet, busy work. And so when she ran into Daniel, she was shocked. The sun was getting to be in the middle of the sky, and the kid was covered in dirt, sweaty from a day of working hard. "What are you doing all the way out here?" "My dad told me to check the fence lines," he said, breathing hard. She wondered if the kid walked all the way over here. "We've been working since 4:30. "Well, now, that is a violation of child labor laws. Have you had lunch?" "No," he said, "I'm good. Dad said that if I wanted to work the ranch, I had to be tough. I have to work on the same schedule as everyone else." "Well," she said slowly, "sure, but..." And she didn't know why she felt any compassion for this kid, for the scrappy boy who looked like a gangly man who hadn't grown into his testosterone yet. Except God knew their parents had never taken any softness or pity on them, while in many ways they'd turned into functional humans. She didn't think that they were all emotionally conversant. Her behavior this morning was an exhibit A in that. Part of her, part she hadn't known existed, just wanted better for this kid. "Come on back to the house with me. I'm going to put together some food and you can help me. That'll be part of your work day." "That doesn't sound like ranch hand business." So she put her hands on her hips and stared the kid down. "Do I look like a cook to you, or do I look like a ranch hand?" "Well," his eyes flickered up her body to her cheeks turned scarlet. "Lord help her. I'm a ranch hand," she said, "and you, kid, need to take a break, or you're not going to be able to get any functional work done, and I don't want to hear any whining about it." "Oh, yeah, all right. You can ride back with me." "Oh," he said, "thanks." She got into the cab of the truck with the kid and drove him back to the farmhouse. And the one thing she was grateful for was, even though she'd run into Daniel, she hadn't seen his father anywhere. Chapter 7. Micah couldn't find Daniel anywhere, and he was starting to get worried, which manifested itself into irritation. And he texted him 3 or 4 times, and he hadn't given a response. Finally, he lost his temper and called, "What? Where the hell are you?" "Working, like you said." "Where?" "At the ranch house." He cursed and hung up the phone and then started to drive over to the ranch house. He didn't know what was up, and he hoped that the kid wasn't making a nuisance of himself. Yeah, he was being hard on him. He was running him maybe a little more ragged than he was strictly necessary, but the thing was, Daniel didn't understand life. He had it rough with his mom, it was true, but more or less, Micah had worked as hard as he could, give him a childhood that the kid didn't understand, that he was supposed to sit back and let things be easy. He didn't understand struggle, not really, and he shouldn't be in any hurry to rush into one. Micah had no intention of hanging out here for the next 30 days. His plan was to get the kid so sick of work by the end of the 3 days that they would be on the next road back to Texas. His ranch could run on its own for a bit, but he certainly didn't intend to leave it for 30 days. That said, he was not going to tell the kid that he was trying to get out of this, nor was he going to openly welch on the promise in any way. One thing he knew about Daniel was that he didn't have the stability that he should be able to count on, and that was all Lacey's fault. "Well, you're the one that dated her and had a kid with her." Sure, maybe he had done the best he could to offer stability, and he still was. Where the hell had she been? She hadn't even known or cared where Daniel was. He rolled up the farmhouse and thoughts of Arizona as she'd been yesterday. He thought of her often, a part of a simpler and a simpler time. And yet, simpler life and a simpler time. And yet, right now, nothing felt simple or easy. He pulled up to the house, walked up the front porch. He'd been here before, though it had been a long time ago. He shared beers with her brothers, talked about different things. In some ways, he felt like he was living in a flashback, except of course, his son was behind that door. And when that door opened, it was Arizona who answered, wearing one of those tight T-shirts that drew his attention. "Well, who's the horny asshole now?" "Why did you bring him in here?" he asked, his voice harder than he intended. "He was hungry," she said, her expression defiant. "I thought he needed a lunch break." He had some granola in his bag. He's a growing boy, and that is not enough. Are you a parent? No, but I have common sense, she said. I'm trying to toughen him up. Oh my gosh, you're like a walking advertisement for toxic masculinity. Can I see my son, please? Come on in, she said.